The battlefield was chaotic. A human space station, once a symbol of strength, was now a crumbling fortress. Waves of enemy fire pounded its outer defenses as human soldiers fought desperately to protect what little was left of their base. The Drakthar, a highly advanced alien race, had launched an all-out assault, and this time, it seemed like there was no way out. Captain Soren, the leader of the human forces, was at the front lines, commanding his troops with unwavering resolve. Despite their best efforts, the humans were outnumbered and outgunned. The Drakthar had superior technology, shields that could repel anything the humans threw at them, and weapons capable of obliterating entire squads in seconds. Every blast from the enemy sent shockwaves through the station, and each explosion left behind a trail of debris and fire. The situation seemed hopeless. Captain Soren could feel the weight of the battle crushing his forces. His soldiers were exhausted, their ammunition was running low, and their hope was dwindling. He could see the fear in their eyes as they fought to hold their ground. He knew that if the Drakthar breached their defenses, it would be the end for all of them. As the battle raged on, Captain Soren's voice crackled over the comms. "Hold the line. We can't let them through." But the situation grew worse with each passing minute. The Drakthar were relentless, and their forces seemed to multiply. Captain Soren, bloodied and bruised, watched as another wave of soldiers fell, their bodies sprawled across the station's metallic floors. His heart sank as he realized that they had no way of stopping the Drakthar onslaught. Their end was near. Then, something unexpected happened. From the chaos, a lone figure appeared, a massive alien soldier clad in advanced battle armor. His eyes glowed with a fierce, cold light as he marched forward, his footsteps shaking the ground beneath him. This wasn't just any soldier. It was Krovik, a warrior of the Drakthar army. Krovak had been part of the assault against the humans, but now something had gone terribly wrong. During the battle, an explosion had thrown him to the ground. His armor had been damaged, and he was badly wounded. His body ached, and his vision blurred as he tried to rise. The battlefield was a blur of death and destruction, but Krovik's focus remained on the humans who had been fighting against his people. Despite the pain, Krovak knew his mission wasn't over. He struggled to stand, his mind clouded with confusion and rage. But just as he prepared to charge forward once again, something strange happened. The humans didn't shoot him down. Instead, they approached him, carefully, almost as if they were rescuing him. Krovak's instincts screamed at him to fight back, to destroy them, to follow the orders he had been given. But his body refused to move. The weight of his injuries kept him rooted to the spot, unable to escape, unable to fight. The humans weren't taking any chances, though. They moved quickly, surrounding Krovak. They weren't there to finish him off. No, they were there to help him. Krovak could hardly believe it. His race, the Drakthar, saw weakness as a flaw. In their eyes, mercy was a sign of weakness. Yet, here he was, in the hands of the very species he had been taught to destroy. Krovak's mind raced. He couldn't understand it. Why were they saving him? Why didn't they kill him, as his race would have done to them without hesitation? His instincts told him to resist, to lash out, to fight. But there was something different about these humans, something he couldn't explain. "Get him to the med bay," Captain Soren's voice rang out, his orders sharp and precise. Krovak was lifted by two soldiers who carried him away from the battlefield and toward the station's medical facility. His body screamed in pain with every step, but the humans didn't care. They didn't leave him behind like his own race would have. They treated him with care, as if he was one of their own. As they reached the medical bay, Krovak could feel the weight of his injuries pulling him down. His vision faded in and out, and his thoughts grew foggy. He tried to make sense of what was happening, but the pain was too much to bear. He collapsed onto the medical table, his consciousness slipping away. Moments later, he awoke to find himself in a strange room, surrounded by humans. The sterile, white walls of the medical bay felt foreign to him. The air smelled different, clean, almost soothing. The only sound was the soft hum of medical equipment. Krovak's eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape, but he was too weak to move. His body felt heavy, his limbs unresponsive. He could barely lift his head. He felt vulnerable, something he hadn't felt in years. For the first time, Krovak wasn't in control of the situation. He was at the mercy of these humans. A human woman approached him, her face calm and focused. She wore a white medical uniform, and her eyes were filled with concern. Krovak tensed, his mind racing. He could see the compassion in her eyes, but he didn't trust it. His race never showed weakness. To show mercy was to be weak. To spare a life was a mistake. "Stay calm," the woman said softly, her voice reassuring. "We're here to help you." Krovak growled under his breath, his pride clashing with the reality before him. His species had always been taught to view humans as weak, inferior. They had no place in the galaxy, no real strength. Yet here he was, injured and helpless, and these humans were the ones tending to his wounds. He couldn't understand it. He tried to force himself to move, to get up, to escape. But his body betrayed him. He was too weak, too injured. "Why are you helping me?" Krovak finally managed to croak, his voice hoarse. The woman paused, her gaze steady. "Because no one deserves to die alone on a battlefield. Not even an enemy." Krovak's mind reeled. The words echoed in his head. No one deserved to die alone. Was that the way of humans? Were they truly this merciful? It was a concept he had never encountered before. He had been raised to believe that mercy was a weakness. But here, on this strange ship, he was faced with something entirely different. As Krovak lay there, helpless and confused, he felt a strange sense of unease creeping into his mind. These humans were not like the Drakthar. They didn't live by the same rules, the same codes of conduct. And yet they had saved his life. The more he thought about it, the more the question nagged at him. Why? The answer eluded him, but one thing was certain. Everything he had been taught about the humans, everything he had believed to be true, was starting to unravel. And that scared him more than any battle ever could. Krovak's mind was spinning. The pain from his injuries throbbed in every part of his body, yet the confusion in his mind felt like a heavier burden. He was lying on a cold, metallic table in the ship's medical bay. The hum of the machines around him was a constant reminder that he was no longer on the battlefield, no longer in control of his fate. As his vision slowly cleared, he saw her, a human woman, dressed in a white uniform, working quickly and efficiently to tend to his wounds. Her hands moved with precision, applying medical treatments to his gashes, stitching up his armor's cuts, and injecting something into his veins to ease the pain. Despite the alien nature of the situation, Krovak couldn't deny that her actions were careful, compassionate, even. It was the exact opposite of what he had been trained to expect from humans. Humans, as far as Krovak had been told, were weak, pitiful creatures who could never survive in the harsh realities of the universe. His race, the Drakthar, followed a strict survival of the fittest ideology. In their society, weakness was a death sentence, and mercy was a foreign concept. The strong survived, and the weak were cast aside, or worse, destroyed. Yet here he was, lying helpless on a medical table, and this human woman, Dr. Elena, as he learned from her namedic, was saving his life, saving the life of an enemy. The very same humans he had been taught to exterminate without hesitation. He glanced at her with suspicion in his eyes. "Why are you helping me?" His voice was hoarse, the words coming out in a rasp. It didn't make sense. He had seen the way humans fought, how they struggled to defend themselves against superior forces, how they were always at a disadvantage. Yet here they were, helping the soldier of their enemy when they could have easily killed him. Dr. Elena didn't look up immediately. She focused on his injuries, making sure the medicine was working, and then she spoke. Because every life is worth saving. Krovac, she said softly, her voice steady. Not just human life, but every life. We believe that every being has a purpose. Her words struck Krovac like a blow to the chest. In the Drakthar culture, they didn't value the lives of others unless they were beneficial. A life was only worth something if it contributed to the survival of the fittest. But these humans, they saw value in life itself, even in the face of war. How can you waste your time on me? Krovac grunted. You should have let me die on the battlefield. It would have been better for both of us. Dr. Elena paused, finally looking him in the eye. There was no hatred or fear in her gaze. Instead, there was a quiet understanding, something that Krovac couldn't place. She spoke as though she had seen the darkness of the universe, but still believed in something greater than that. Because that's not how we see things. We don't believe in killing unless it's necessary. And even then, we only fight to protect the ones we love. The rest of the galaxy isn't just black and white, good and evil. There's a lot of gray in between. Krovac. Krovac stared at her, his mind racing. He couldn't understand it. He had been raised to see everything as a fight for survival, to see any sign of weakness as a threat. The Drakthar were ruthless because they had to be. The galaxy was filled with predators, each species out for its own survival. Krovac had killed without hesitation. He had never questioned it. It was the way of the universe. But now, in this cold medical bay, surrounded by humans who showed him kindness instead of hatred, his beliefs were starting to crack. Why do you believe in this gray area? Krovac asked, the words coming out almost as a challenge. My people never had the luxury of seeing things that way. It's always been kill or be killed. There is no room for mercy. Dr. Elena didn't respond right away. She continued working, adjusting the IV line in his arm. Then she sat down beside him, her voice low but filled with conviction. Maybe that's true for your people, Krovac, but it doesn't have to be that way for everyone. It doesn't have to be that way for you. Her words were simple, but they carried weight. They cut through the walls Krovac had built around himself for years. He had always thought that the universe was unforgiving, that to survive, he had to be as cold and ruthless as the galaxy around him. But here, in the presence of this human, he was beginning to question everything he had ever known. I'm not like you, Krovac muttered. I've killed countless humans. My hands are stained with their blood. I am a soldier, a warrior. Dr. Elena's eyes softened. She reached out, placing a hand gently on his shoulder, her touch surprisingly warm. You may have been a soldier, Krovac, but you are more than that. You are a living being, capable of change, just like the rest of us, just like anyone else. For the first time, Krovac was silent. He didn't know how to respond. In his life, no one had ever shown him kindness without expecting something in return. No one had ever looked at him and seen anything other than a weapon, a tool for destruction. But here, this woman, this human, was seeing something different in him. She was treating him with dignity, as if his life had value, even though he was an enemy. As the days passed, Krovac began to recover. His body healed, thanks to the care Dr. Elena and her team provided. But it wasn't just his physical wounds that were healing. Something inside him was changing. The walls he had built around his mind, the coldness he had carried with him for so long, were starting to crumble. He began to reflect on the way the humans had treated him, on how they didn't see him as just an enemy to destroy. They saw him as a being with value, someone worth saving. And slowly, Krovac started to understand the depth of what it meant to be human. He wasn't sure if he could ever fully embrace their way of thinking, but for the first time, he was starting to see that there was more to life than just survival. There was a power in mercy, in empathy, that he had never known existed. And it scared him. It scared him because he knew that this new understanding could change everything. But deep down, a part of him felt something else, a hope A hope that maybe, just maybe, there was a different way to live. One that didn't involve endless fighting, endless killing. As the days turned into weeks, Krovak found himself torn between the values he had grown up with and the new perspective that had been introduced to him. He didn't have all the answers, and he didn't know what the future held. But one thing was clear. The humans had given him something he never thought possible, an opportunity to see the galaxy and himself through a different lens. Krovak had never felt so torn. As the days passed in the medical bay, his body healed, but his mind was still plagued with doubt. The humans had shown him kindness, something he had never experienced before. Yet, his loyalty to the Drakthar Empire, the very people he had fought for, was something that could not be erased so easily. But the more time he spent among the humans, the more he realized something crucial. They weren't just fighting for survival. They fought for something greater, something that Krovak didn't fully understand. But he could feel it deep in his chest. It wasn't just the instinct to live that drove them. It was the desire to protect, to preserve life, no matter the cost. One day, as Krovak was sitting in the ship's lounge, watching human soldiers prepare for another mission, a sudden alert blared through the ship's intercom system. The warning echoed across the entire base. The Drakthar fleet had arrived. They were coming for the humans, and they weren't coming for peace. Alert! Drakthar ships detected. ETA 30 minutes. The voice of the commander boomed over the speakers, sending everyone into a flurry of activity. Krovak's heart sank as he stood up, the reality of the situation settling in. His people were here, and they weren't here for a diplomatic mission. They had come to finish what they started. The Drakthar were a brutal, merciless empire, and they wouldn't stop until every last human was eradicated. The thought of fighting against his own people filled Krovak with a deep unease. He had been trained to fight for the Drakthar, trained to obey without question. But now, as he looked at the humans around him, preparing for battle, he realized that he couldn't be a part of the destruction. He couldn't fight for a cause that only spread death. As the humans scrambled to their stations, Krovak found himself face to face with Dr. Elena. She had been working non-stop, making sure that the soldiers were ready, that the defenses were in place. But she paused when she saw Krovak standing in the doorway. Her eyes softened when they met his. "We need you, Krovak," she said, her voice urgent but calm. "We don't have time to waste. We can't fight this alone." Krovak stood frozen, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. His loyalty to the Drakthar, the warriors he had fought beside, was at odds with the humanity he had come to understand. But he had already made his decision. He couldn't turn his back on these people. Not anymore. "I won't let them destroy you," Krovak finally said, his voice low, but firm. "I'll help you fight." The words felt strange to him, alien even, but they were true. He wasn't just a soldier anymore. He was something else, something he had never known he could be. And in that moment, Krovak knew what he had to do. The battle began quickly, as the Drakthar fleet descended upon the human base with terrifying speed. Ships exploded in the distance as the humans scrambled to defend their position. The air was thick with the roar of gunfire, the sharp blasts of energy weapons, and the sound of metal clashing against metal. Krovak was ready. He suited up in the alien armor, his Drakthar technology now fused with the human tech he had been taught to respect. As he stepped into the battlefield, the gravity of the situation hit him like a ton of bricks. The battlefield was littered with bodies, both human and alien, and the air was thick with smoke and debris. His old instincts kicked in. The rush of combat, the battle cries of his comrades, it was all so familiar. The Drakthar were a warlike species. They didn't care for strategy or mercy. They simply destroyed. But this time, it was different. Krovak wasn't fighting for conquest or glory. He was fighting to protect. He made his way to the front lines, his massive alien form towering over the humans around him. He could hear the hum of energy weapons, the rapid fire of plasma cannons, and the deep rumble of explosions shaking the very ground beneath him. The Drakthar were relentless, attacking from all sides. The humans were outnumbered, their defenses barely holding. Krovak's eyes locked on his old squadron. They were there, leading the charge, their weapons aimed directly at the humans. For a brief moment, Krovak hesitated. These were his brothers in arms, his comrades. They had fought side by side for years, but there was no room for hesitation. The humans needed him. In a blur of motion, Krovak activated his cloaking device, disappearing into the chaos. He moved silently, his every step calculated, his mind focused on the task ahead. As he approached the Drakthar forces, he felt the familiar pulse of battle rage inside him. But this time, he wasn't fighting for glory or for his people. He was fighting for something much more important. Without warning, he slammed into one of his old friends, an elite Drakthar soldier. The impact sent the soldier flying backward, his weapon skidding across the ground. Krovak's heart raced as he faced his former comrade. The soldier's eyes widened in shock. "Krovak, what are you doing?" The Drakthar soldier growled, reaching for his weapon. "I'm stopping you," Krovak said, his voice a low, guttural growl. "I'm not fighting for the Drakthar anymore." Before the Drakthar soldier could react, Krovak grabbed him by the throat, lifting him off the ground with ease. "You are my brother," Krovak said, his voice filled with emotion. "But you're fighting for a cause that has no honor." With one swift motion, Krovak threw the soldier aside and turned toward the rest of the Drakthar forces. They were closing in, but Krovak wasn't finished. His loyalty had shifted. He wasn't a Drakthar anymore. He was a protector, a warrior fighting for life, not destruction. As the battle raged on, Krovak used his strength and advanced alien technology to take down wave after wave of Drakthar soldiers. His mind was clear now, focused on one singular goal: protecting the humans who had shown him a new way to live. With each strike, he proved to himself that his decision was the right one. He wasn't just a tool of war. He was a soldier of life. The humans rallied around him, their morale boosted by Krovak's unexpected intervention. They fought harder, knowing that one of their fiercest enemies had turned against his own people. The tide of battle began to shift, and the Drakthar forces, once so confident, now found themselves struggling. Krovak fought with all his might, but the battle wasn't over yet. The Drakthar would not retreat easily. As the final wave of Drakthar soldiers charged forward, Krovak knew the ultimate test was coming. He had made his choice, and now he would fight to the end. For the humans, for the new life he had found, and for the future that lay ahead. The battle had raged on for hours, the sound of gunfire and explosions deafening. Despite Krovak's overwhelming strength and alien technology, the Drakthar forces were relentless. They were powerful, and they knew no mercy. The humans fought valiantly, but the sheer scale of the Drakthar's military might make their survival uncertain. Krovak stood in the midst of the chaos, the weight of his decisions heavy on his mind. He had made a choice: to protect the humans, to fight against the empire he had once sworn allegiance to. But with each passing moment, the truth became more evident. Even with his help, the humans were outnumbered, and their chances of survival were rapidly dwindling. It was then that the communications link buzzed in Krovak's ear. He immediately recognized the voice of his old commander, Zarak. It was cold, commanding, and it sent a shiver down his spine. "Krovak," Zarak's voice came through the link. "You have betrayed us. You have chosen to fight for these weaklings. Do not think we will allow your disobedience to go unpunished. You are still one of us, and you will return to the Drakthar fold. Join us, or face the consequences." Krovak's heart raced. The words stung, but they also confirmed his deepest fear. The Drakthar were not just enemies in this fight. They were now his pursuers. He had crossed a line, and there was no turning back. He had become a target for his own people. The voice continued, more forceful now. "The humans cannot win this war. We will obliterate them. If you do not return to us, we will destroy everything you care about. You have a choice. Join us, or watch your new comrades fall. Krovak clenched his fists. He could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on him. He had already given up his old life, but now, the consequences of that choice were becoming painfully clear. The Drakthar had always been about power, about domination. They would not let him go easily. His defection was a betrayal they would not forgive. As Krovak stood there, torn between his past and his present, he heard the footsteps of Dr. Elena approaching. Her voice was soft, but urgent as she spoke. Krovak, what's happening? She could see the tension in his posture, the way his fists were clenched, the way his eyes were clouded with uncertainty. You've been through so much, and we need you. The humans need you. Krovak took a deep breath, his mind racing. The Drakthar are giving me an ultimatum, he said, his voice low. They want me to return to help them destroy you. If I don't, they will wipe you all out. Dr. Elena's eyes widened, but there was no fear in her gaze, only determination. She stepped forward, placing a hand on his shoulder. We've come this far together, Krovak. You can't let them pull you back into their war. You're one of us now. We need your strength, your mind, your heart. For a moment, Krovak just stood there, the weight of the decision suffocating him. He had been trained to obey, to follow orders without question, but the humans had shown him something his own people never had: empathy, compassion, and a sense of duty beyond self-interest. The bond he had formed with them over the past few days had become unbreakable. But before Krovak could respond, the comms link buzzed again. This time, it was more urgent. Krovak, we're under attack. Drakthar ships are breaking through our defenses. We need you at the front lines now. Without a word, Krovak turned and sprinted towards the command center. His mind was made up. He would not turn back. He would not let the Drakthar win. But as he entered the control room, he saw something that made his blood run cold. On the screen before him, he saw the Drakthar fleet descending upon the human base, their ships firing relentlessly. The humans were already outmatched, and with the sudden assault, the situation was now critical. We can't hold them off, the commander shouted, his voice filled with desperation. We need reinforcements, and we need them now. Krovak's mind raced. He could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on him again. The Drakthar were no longer just his people, they were his enemies. He had to act fast, and he had to act decisively. Captain, open a direct line to the Drakthar fleet, Krovak said, his voice steady and firm. The commander looked at him in confusion. You want to talk to them? He asked, disbelief in his voice. Are you crazy? I'm not going back, Krovak said, his voice unwavering. But we need to stop them before it's too late. The commander hesitated, but then nodded. He opened the communication channel, and soon Zarek's face appeared on the screen. His eyes were filled with contempt, but there was a hint of surprise when he saw Krovak. Krovak, you dare show your face? Zarek sneered. You've made your choice. The humans will pay for your treachery. Krovak's heart clenched, but he stood tall, his gaze unwavering. I will not fight for you anymore, he said, his voice cold. I will not help you destroy these people. Zarek's expression twisted into one of fury. You think you can defy us? You think you can stop the Drakthar? He motioned to the fleet behind him, the massive warships gliding ominously through space. This is not just about you, Krovak. This is about the future of the galaxy. You cannot win. Krovak's eyes narrowed, the weight of the situation sinking in. He knew the Drakthar were powerful, but he wasn't going to back down. He wasn't going to let them take everything he had fought for. We'll see about that, Krovak said, his voice full of resolve. With that, he turned and signaled to the humans. We fight now. We fight together. Just as Krovak prepared to lead the charge, another unexpected turn of events occurred. A blast rocked the base, sending shockwaves through the entire ship. The lights flickered, and the room filled with the sound of alarms blaring. A traitor had infiltrated their ranks. The humans had been betrayed from within. A Drakthar spy, planted among them long before, had sabotaged their defenses. The walls of their sanctuary were no longer safe, and Krovik, now standing at the heart of the battlefield, knew that the fight had only just begun. The Drakthar weren't just attacking from the outside anymore. They were coming from within. As the shock settled, Krovak looked around at the soldiers who had once been strangers, but now were comrades, partners in the fight for survival. And with a bitter twist of fate, he realized that the real battle was not just against the Drakthar army. It was against the traitors in their midst. Now more than ever, Krovak knew that the stakes were higher than he had ever imagined. The betrayal had cut deep, but there was no turning back. The humans were counting on him, and he would not fail them. The battle had reached its breaking point. The human soldiers, battered and bruised, stood on the edge of despair. The once vibrant hope in their eyes had dimmed, and the overwhelming weight of their inevitable defeat pressed down on them. The Drakthar Empire had unleashed their most devastating weapon. AI-controlled war machines, each one a towering mechanical monster that seemed impossible to stop. They marched through the battlefield with relentless precision, their metallic bodies shimmering under the harsh light of the distant sun. Captain Soren paced nervously, his face a mask of frustration and exhaustion. His men, though brave, were running low on ammunition and morale. They had fought with everything they had, but the Drakthar forces were unyielding. Every attempt to break their lines had failed, and now it seemed like the end was near. The humans had no chance against such overwhelming odds. The AI machines were too fast, too smart, and too powerful. Inside the command center, the mood was grim. The last of the human commanders were gathering around the strategic table, discussing their options. But there were no options left, just desperation. "Captain, we're done," one of the officers muttered, slamming his fist on the table. "The Drakthar are advancing faster than we can keep up. They've overrun our defenses. It's only a matter of time before they breach the final line." Captain Soren's face darkened. "We can't give up now. We can't let all this sacrifice go to waste. We need a plan, something we haven't tried yet." Just then, Krovak stepped forward from the shadows. His presence seemed to command attention as the humans looked at him, still uncertain but also desperate. He had proven himself time and time again, but this was different. This was the final stand. "We can still win this," Krovak said, his voice low but confident. "I have knowledge of their technology. I can help you." The humans exchanged uncertain glances, but Krovik continued. "The AI machines that you're fighting against, your weapons are too primitive to destroy them directly. But I know how they think. I know their weaknesses." Captain Soren, though skeptical, knew that this might be their only chance. He nodded slowly. "All right, Krovak. Tell me what you need." Krovak's plan was bold, risky, and would require all of them to push their limits. He explained that the AI-controlled machines were designed with one flaw: an over-reliance on their centralized command system. If they could destroy the central hub, the entire fleet of war machines would be disabled. But to get close enough to strike, they would need to launch an attack like never before. The humans listened intently as Krovak detailed a two-pronged assault. One part would be a ground strike, while the other would focus on a coordinated orbital bombardment. The plan was ambitious, but with Krovak's alien knowledge and the humans' courage, it could work. The first part of the plan involved a small, elite team of soldiers, led by Captain Soren, infiltrating the Drakthar lines to plant explosives at the central hub. This would be the most dangerous part of the mission, as the enemy's AI-controlled machines were patrolling the area relentlessly. But with Krovak's guidance, the team could use the terrain and advanced tactics to sneak in undetected. The second part of the plan was equally critical. The remaining human forces, including Krovak, would commandeer the human warships in orbit. They would position themselves above the battlefield, launching a massive orbital bombardment aimed at taking out the Drakthar's central communication systems. thereby weakening the AI's control over the war machines. As the final battle began, the air was thick with tension. The human soldiers, with their newfound resolve, gathered at the launch bay. The sound of their boots echoed through the metal halls as they prepared to leave, knowing that this might be their last stand. Krovac stood with them, his alien strength and knowledge a valuable asset, but even he knew that there was no guarantee they would survive. On the ground, the Drakthar war machines loomed large, their red eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of human resistance. Their movements were cold and calculated, an artificial intelligence in control, with no room for mercy. The humans were vastly outnumbered, but they fought with the fire of desperation in their hearts. They had no choice but to win. Krovac and Captain Soren led the charge, their team moving swiftly through the enemy's defenses. The sound of laser fire and explosions filled the air, the chaos almost overwhelming. Krovac moved with unmatched precision, his alien technology allowing him to evade the enemy's attacks with ease. He fought alongside the humans, taking down Drakthar soldiers with ease, his body a blur of motion. The team finally reached the central hub, a massive structure surrounded by AI-controlled machines. The atmosphere was tense as they planted the explosives, knowing that the fate of the battle rested on this moment. Captain Soren gave Krovac a look, one that spoke volumes. They were in this together. "Are you ready?" Krovac asked. "Let's make it count," Captain Soren replied, his voice grim. The countdown began. The team rushed out of the central hub, narrowly avoiding the Drakthar war machines as they exploded in the distance. They made it to a safe distance, and just as the explosion rocked the ground beneath them, the entire Drakthar control system was thrown into chaos. Above, the remaining human forces launched their orbital bombardment, waves of missiles raining down from the sky. The massive warships fired in unison, each shot precisely targeted to cripple the Drakthar fleet. The sky lit up with explosions as the bombardment struck, and one by one, the Drakthar's war machines fell, their systems shutting down as the central hub was destroyed. But even as they celebrated the success of their first strike, the Drakthar were not done. Their final retaliation came in the form of an enormous flagship, breaking through the human lines and charging toward their base. It was their last-ditch effort to crush the humans once and for all. Captain Soren turned to Krovac, his face set with determination. "We can't let them get away. We have to stop them." With the AI control disabled, the warship's missiles were now the final line of defense. Krovac and Captain Soren, alongside their remaining forces, fought through the chaos, launching one final assault on the flagship. The air was filled with the roar of explosions, the crackle of energy blasts, and the shouts of soldiers giving everything they had. In a final, desperate push, Krovac and Captain Soren led a ground attack to board the Drakthar flagship. They fought their way through the enemy soldiers, each step harder than the last. The battle was brutal, but the humans were determined. Together, they overran the flagship's defenses and reached the control room. With one final strike, Krovac delivered the blow that destroyed the flagship's command center. The massive ship, once a symbol of the Drakthar Empire's power, exploded in a fiery ball of destruction. The Drakthar forces, now leaderless and shattered, were defeated. The humans had won. As the smoke cleared and the battlefield fell silent, the remaining soldiers stood in disbelief. They had done it. Against all odds, they had defeated the Drakthar Empire. Krovac stood among them, his expression stoic. He had given everything, and in the end, he had become a hero in his own right, a hero to the humans who had once seen him as an enemy. Captain Soren clapped Krovac on the shoulder, a tired but grateful smile on his face. "We did it. Together." Krovac nodded, his heart swelling with pride for the humans he had come to consider his family. They had fought side by side, and they had won. Against all odds, they had made history. And in that moment, Krovac knew that he had found his place, not among the stars, not as an alien, but as a part of something greater. He had found his home. The final battle had come to an end, and the Drakthar Empire was no more. The sounds of warfare that had filled the air for so long had faded, replaced by an eerie silence. The humans, once on the brink of extinction, stood victorious. The Drakthar's mighty fleet, their eye-controlled war machines, and their terrifying leaders had all been brought down. It was a victory like no other, a testament to the strength, resilience, and bravery of those who had fought for it. But despite the triumph, there was an emotional weight that hung over the battlefield. The humans had won, but they had also lost so much. Many soldiers had given their lives, many heroes had fallen, and countless sacrifices had been made. As the dust settled, the survivors stood amidst the ruins, their eyes scanning the wreckage, knowing they would never be the same again. Captain Soren stood at the front, his eyes focused on the horizon. The battle was over, but the war had left its mark on him, as it had on all of them. Yet there was something else in his gaze, something more than just survival. It was hope. Hope that, after everything, they could rebuild. Hope for a future that, until a few months ago, had seemed impossible. Beside him stood Krovak, the alien soldier who had once been their enemy, but who had proven himself to be one of their greatest allies. Krovak's role in the victory had been undeniable. His knowledge of Drakthar technology, his unmatched strength, and his willingness to fight alongside the humans had turned the tide in their favor. But now, with the battle behind them, Krovak faced an entirely new battle, one within himself. For the first time in his life, Krovak was free from the constraints of his old allegiance. He no longer had to answer to the Drakthar Empire, no longer had to follow their commands. Yet with this freedom came a crushing realization. He had no place in the world he had once known. His people, his race, had shown him their true face, the face of destruction, of cruelty, of a desire for domination that left no room for empathy or understanding. Krovak's heart had broken when he saw what his people had become, and in that moment, he knew he could never go back to them. As he stood alongside the humans, watching them celebrate their victory, Krovak felt a profound emptiness. He had betrayed his people, turned his back on the empire that had raised him. And for what? For the chance to fight alongside the humans, to help them defeat the Drakthar. It seemed like a small price to pay, but the cost had been much greater than he had anticipated. Captain Soren noticed the look in Krovak's eyes and placed a hand on his shoulder. "You're with us now, Krovak," he said, his voice firm but kind. "You've proven your loyalty, and you've fought alongside us like a true soldier. You don't have to carry the weight of your past anymore." Krovak turned to face the captain, his eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and sorrow. "I don't know who I am anymore," he admitted softly. "I was born to fight for the Drakthar. They were my family, my people. But now, I see the truth. I see the destruction they caused, and I can't be a part of that. I can't go back to them." Captain Soren nodded, understanding the pain Krovak was feeling. "The past doesn't define you, Krovak. You're here now, and that's what matters. You've made your choice, and you've chosen humanity, and that's enough." But Krovak knew that it wasn't that simple. His heart ached as he thought of his former comrades, his former family. He had been one of them, had shared their values, their beliefs, and now to turn his back on them completely felt like a betrayal, one that would haunt him for the rest of his life. The truth was, Krovak had changed. The journey he had been on, the battles he had fought, the comrades he had gained, these experiences had shaped him into someone new. He no longer saw the world in terms of his old race or the empire he had once served. He saw the world through the eyes of the humans he had fought beside. He saw hope, compassion, and the strength of the human spirit. He saw the future they could build together. But leaving his old life behind was not something Krovak could do lightly. It was a painful process, one that required him to come to terms with everything he had been taught to believe, everything he had once held dear. It required him to let go of the anger and hatred that had fueled his every action, to embrace the ideals of empathy and unity that the humans had shown him. One quiet evening, As the sun began to set over the battlefield, Krovak stood alone, staring at the distant stars. The sky was clear, the stars twinkling in the vast expanse of space. It was a sight he had seen countless times before, but now it felt different. He felt small beneath the vastness of the universe, but at the same time, he felt a strange sense of belonging. The stars no longer felt cold and distant. They felt like a part of something much bigger, something full of possibility. He wasn't sure where he belonged anymore, but one thing was clear. He could no longer be a part of the Drakthar Empire. His past, with all its cruelty and destruction, was behind him. He had chosen to fight for something greater, for a future where compassion and understanding could thrive. And that future was with the humans. As Krovak stood there, lost in thought, a voice broke through the silence. It was Captain Soren, walking towards him with a solemn expression on his face. "I've been thinking," Soren began, his voice hesitant. "You've given so much, Krovak. You've sacrificed everything for us. And for that, we're grateful. But there's something else I want to say." Krovak turned to face the captain, his heart pounding. "What is it?" Soren paused, as if choosing his words carefully. "You don't have to leave. You don't have to go anywhere. You're one of us now. You've earned your place here. The humans you fought alongside. They see you as one of their own. And I think it's time you see it too." Krovak looked into Soren's eyes, and for the first time, he felt a sense of peace. He had found something he never thought he would. A family. He wasn't alone anymore. He wasn't an outsider. He was home. "I don't know if I can ever truly leave my past behind," Krovak said, his voice filled with uncertainty. "But I know that I can't go back to it. I've seen the power of humanity, and I want to be a part of that. I want to fight for something better, for something that matters." Soren smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "Then that's all we need, Krovak. Welcome home." As the stars continued to shine above them, Krovak took a deep breath, his heart filled with a sense of peace he had never known before. He had finally found his place in the universe, not as a soldier of destruction, but as a soldier of hope. And as the first light of a new dawn broke across the horizon, Krovak knew that this was just the beginning. The future was his, and the future was with humanity.